Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, digital transformation champions, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke and this podcast is brought to you by Digital Training Institute. In this episode, number 114, I'm doing a deep dive into audience segmentation, how to define, market, and create messages your ideal avatar will love. I'll also be discussing the value of spending time nailing down your perfect customer and how that effort will pay off. In social media news, LinkedIn announces a range of new features for Sales Navigator, Facebook rolls out Facebook Stories highlights on profiles, and Twitter is going to display related hashtags for trending topics. I interviewed digital marketing pro Gavin Duff from Friday Agency in Dublin. In shoutouts, 3 audience insight hacks to better inform your digital campaigns. Ask JSB in JSB's column, how I defined, marketed and won over my niche audience and what you can learn from me. And of course, find out what social media tool saved my working week.
Social media news.
LinkedIn has announced some new and exciting features for Sales Navigator. In a blog post, LinkedIn say they are introducing a new era for the platform. First of all, they've introduced deals where managers and reps can more effectively understand and manage their pipeline. Office 365 integration to take Sales Navigator actions, which will allow you to see key insights without ever having to leave your Outlook for web inbox. A new search experience, which has been completely redesigned, and a new search results pages to make your experience faster and easier. Mobile lead pages brings a full Sales Navigator experience on the go. And they've also introduced new Snap partners. Adobe Sign joins the program, while Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, and SalesLoft roll out much tighter Snap integrations. And finally, Sales Navigator Ideas, which they say opens up a direct channel of communication between you and the Sales Navigator development team. Facebook has announced the highlights feature on Facebook Stories. We've had this feature on Instagram since December last year, and it's a really useful promo in prime social real estate. It also provides us with another way to reuse our Facebook Stories content, showcasing the best of our stories pinned on our profile for an indefinite period of time. The feature also points to a shift away from and an emphasis on ephemeral content, so that content that eventually disappears. I also think it will challenge us to become more creative and professional with our stories. Twitter is going to start showing connected topics on their trending topics listings. This will help us find relevant trends and extra hashtags to jump on when we're responding with our tweets. The feature hasn't been rolled out to everyone just yet, but it will be a useful feature when it does.
Interview.
In this episode, I interview Gavin Duff. Gavin has been working in digital marketing for 15 years, with vast experience in search marketing, data analytics, e-commerce, and digital marketing strategy. He is also a known conference speaker, lecturer, podcast guest, media source, guest blogger, among many other things in the whole area of digital marketing. He has worked for Yahoo, O2, as well as a number of major digital agencies. He's currently head of digital performance at Friday.ie. In this interview, we discuss audience segmentation, targeting, and attribution. We also share some strong views on campaigns that are too broad and thus costly. Gavin says we must work smarter on audience profiling, which will pay off in terms of costing less, but generating a greater return. Find out more about their work at Friday.ie, and you can follow them on Twitter at Friday Agency.
JSB Talks Digital.
Gavin, thank you so much for joining me on JSB Talks Digital.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So today we're talking about audiences and the importance of audience when it comes to digital marketing. Now, we all know the biggest marketing mistake is when you ask somebody, who are you targeting? And they say, everybody. Now, that's always been a big fail. But am I right in saying that it's an even bigger fail in the world of digital?
It is, absolutely, and I think it's across all channels. So whether it's display advertising, paid search, even SEO and content. And very often I've had a kickoff meeting or brainstorm meeting with a client or potential client, and that first same question you just asked will result in a similar answer. It'll be, well, everybody, or everybody in Dublin, or anybody who's between 18 and 30 in Cork. You know, it'll be quite broad, and then we're presented with the challenge of, I suppose, re-educating their thoughts and re-educating them in what it means to target an audience in an effective way and a cost-effective way that will actually, in the end, get you a better return.
And that can be a difficult conversation, right? So you have like the marketing director or the CEO of a company who's been at the helm for perhaps more than a decade, and you're asking him what seems to be the most basic question: who is your audience? And you're challenging them on it. But the world has changed, right? And the nicher that you go, the more return, as you say, you're going to get. So how do your clients respond to you? Are they open and willing to open their mind to new ways of thinking?
They are, I think, if explained correctly. And given that you may be talking to an audience, no pun intended there, who are quite long in the game, if you explain that, look, yes, you have a broad audience, and that's great for branding, that's great for awareness. But if you look back at your last few digital awareness or digital branding campaigns, perhaps you had a takeover on the Irish Times homepage or an RTE. If you actually go back and look at the performance of that campaign, and don't just look at number of impressions, what it cost you per impression or per click, that stuff ultimately doesn't matter. If you actually look at conversions and look at what you made for that campaign, and then usually through unearthing those past performances, you'll find some alarming stats. And that will then typically lead into a conversation around, well, where are your audiences actually currently at? So one thing I've said before is, you know, a lot of brands are very quick to jump on where they feel their audiences will be. So if you're advertising, say you're a car dealership and you're advertising a new car model, people will immediately jump to where their audiences will be. So let's get our ads on CarZone. Let's get them on, you know, Car Buyer's Guide. That all makes sense to a degree, but I'm more interested in where your audiences are right now. So what are they doing right now while they're considering that purchase, considering a new car? And that's just one analogy. And in order to get to those audiences, you know, you can use various things. You can look at your current customer base, look at their demographics. They've probably given you a lot of information already. You can use that to find out where they are. You can certainly use platforms like Facebook, Twitter, etc., who have some excellent targeting opportunities by demographic, by interest. And once all these opportunities are presented and I explain to somebody that, look, this is actually going to target the people that you want at less cost and a better return, it's kind of hard to argue with in the end.
Let's talk about then that process of engaging with your audience and trying to unearth that perfect customer. Very often now our customers are very demanding, so our clients, and because of the transparency and the metrics that are available on digital, there's an element of impatience with customers and they want the sale quicker. I just get a feeling sometimes they're not willing to work hard enough for the attention and to retain that attention of their customers.
I think you're right, and certainly that may be a byproduct of running too many brand campaigns and not seeing immediate results. And too many awareness campaigns without proper, I suppose, attribution or tracking behind those to prove their worth. But yeah, I mean, people do want quick results, but with the right audiences, that's exactly what you do get. You get faster results and much more trackable results.
So you mentioned the A word, you mentioned attribution. I do a lot of work on this, and it's something that I'm not sure is done very well, or that a lot of people understand. Because when you're examining a customer journey, what you see are lots of clicks. But what people are failing to recognize is a single customer journey. And I don't think people have mastered that. And I think that's the negative that the world of digital has brought us.
I think definitely, and attribution, I think, is almost an ugly word to some, because, I think it's gotten a poor reputation in the sense that attribution is never perfect. There is multi-device. You cannot track everything. That is just a fact. But there's more you can do. So if you look at bigger data, for example, then you can understand individual audiences based on single identifiers like email addresses, etc. You can understand them and what they're doing. And the learnings from them can translate to what you're doing across other platforms as well, and inform audiences that you target across other platforms through advertising. So while attribution can never be perfect, it can absolutely inform what your customers are doing and who else you may be right for, if that makes sense.
So what's your approach then in trying to segment and perhaps identify a small niche audience before you scale up with budget and with manpower behind a campaign? What would you do with a client?
First and foremost, this may sound very obvious, but I want to get to know their business. I want to get to know their current customer base. So who has converted in the past? Who are they currently working with? Because those are people who have already engaged with their brand, who have already probably had a good experience with their brand if they haven't, left yet. So there's a gold mine of information in there. If you look at even, for example, if you're a large insurance company, if you can mine some of the data or queries that your customer service team are receiving, then you understand your customers' pain points. You understand the pain points of your audience as well. And your content can address that. You can address that by way of finding where they are when they're discussing these problems and targeting them that way. So absolutely, a lot of it starts with the business itself and the customers themselves. I think beyond that, then there's the traditional avenues of the likes of Facebook, for example, which does offer, in terms of compared to other platforms, it offers sort of unparalleled targeting opportunities. So once you've gotten to know those audiences by getting to know the business and their customers, then you know their pain points, you know their interests potentially, you certainly will know their demographics, gender, location, age. That stuff will all then feed into your targeting. So fundamentally, it really is about knowing current customers. If you're a brand new business, and say you're a startup, for example, and you don't have that customer base to mine as of yet, and then really you're talking about market research. You're talking about looking at competitors, who's using them and why, and potentially surveying them. But a lot of this sounds like very heavy lifting, but ultimately it is a cost-saving initiative. It's an investment in the long term.
And that's a really nice statement to make. It's a cost-saving initiative. Can we talk for a minute about the content and content formats that might engage your ideal audience? Because once you've identified them, you've nailed them down, you're very sure where they're hanging out online, what their interests are, then you need to have a conversation with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think in terms of content, some of that will inform, say, for example, your FAQ type content. So if you are a travel website, people will ask, what's the best things to see in this weekend, etc. There's obvious types of content like that. But then, as well as that, there is, if you're a larger brand, say for example, and you've got a large sponsorship of a GAA team, then that gives you an opportunity to speak to a certain audience who you wouldn't have been able to speak to before. But you've got a reason to talk. You've got a sponsorship, and they may be interested in that. There's a multitude of different types of content, and then there's your website static content, of course, which is more kind of product related and product benefit related, and which a lot of brands are also not particularly doing right.
So what's your advice then for anybody who's listening to this podcast and who feel that they're investing a significant amount in whether it's lead generation, conversion, or whether it's a pay-per-click. Do you think that they need to revisit their audience sub-segments?
Yeah, I think, I mean, no doubt some of them are doing it right. But for those who have concerns around their conversion rate or engagement rates or for that paid traffic, it is time to take a step back. If you look at, for example, and sometimes internal politics can play a part here too. So you mentioned earlier someone quite senior who may be in the role quite a while will say, well, look, we've always done RTE, and RTE advertisement always helps us. Again, revisit those types of relationships and those types of placements you've done in the past, and actually find out using data, have they worked or not. And similarly as well, if you're running display advertising and you're typically using the same placements all the time and you haven't been happy with how it's been performing, have a talk with those publishers and ask those publishers, look, we don't feel this is working. We would like to know during those campaign dates, what audiences were on your site, what was their demographic, what are their interests, what can you tell us about them? If it's a news website, what was happening on those dates? Were we there at the wrong time? Is there another time there could have been something happening relevant to us we could have advertised on instead? So it's about asking all of those, I suppose, more pertinent questions, if that makes sense.
Do you think that there's a lot of people wasting a lot of money, time, and getting poor advice when it comes to digital? Maybe that's an unfair question.
I think it's absolutely valid. Even very recently, I saw a campaign for someone that wasn't a client of ours, who ran a campaign. They got about 300,000 visits from this display campaign across various publishers and channels. About 300,000 visits and a bounce rate of about 99.8%. So most people were not interested. Very, very few went beyond even one page in terms of engagement. There was no conversions. They spent a lot of money on that. And, I would hazard a guess that perhaps the right questions weren't asked beforehand and potentially aren't even asked now, because it's very easy for digital agencies or professionals or even publishers to blind you with the facts. They'll say, well, you wanted 300,000 people to see your ad. Guess what? They did. But they seem to shy away from or even disconnect from the fact that they should want to see your spend perform as well, so that you'll advertise again, and that disconnect, I think, is very much still there. And to answer your question very bluntly, yes, I think people, as a result of that and other things, are definitely wasting a lot of spend.
So finally, Gavin, any predictions in the world of digital over the next 12 months, how we need to iterate our strategies to reflect changes in consumer behavior? Because after all, they dictate and we have to follow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there is, of course, as anyone will say, going to be a move towards more data-driven marketing. I think as a market in Ireland, I think we're a little behind in terms of that. And it comes back as well to mentioning, display advertising on, say, for example, large publishers here, large websites, large news websites. A couple of years ago, I met with the Financial Times in London. They have a data team of probably 20 people and grew from 1 to 20 people in the course of a year or two. I met with them to understand how they worked and how they better understood their customers so that they can sell more expensive advertising to people, but it works better for them. And I think we're going to see more of a shift towards that. We're going to see more of a shift towards publishers, towards platforms being made a little bit more accountable for the performance of people's spend, certainly when it comes to display advertising. So I think that's definitely going to change.
Gavin, an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was like just indulging in some audience segmentation and attribution for the past 15, 20 minutes. So I appreciate your time, and let people know how they can get in touch with you if they really want to do a deep dive on their audience segmentation.
Yeah, so I'm currently head of digital performance for an agency called Friday. So you can get us at friday.ie, and obviously we would love to be of assistance.
Fantastic, Gavin. Thanks a million.
Thank you very much.
Shoutouts.
In this part of the show, I give shout outs to brands, organisations, or individuals whose work online is remarkable and worth talking about. In this episode, I'm sharing 3 audience segmentation hacks to get you closer to your ideal prospect.
1.
How can you get to know the website traffic that is hitting your site on a monthly basis? Well, surveyfunnel.io is a super tool to ask that traffic why they've come and what they need. The software segments your audience based on a series of questions you ask them. So, you can use it to create surveys, segment leads based on their interests, and automatically send the data to your CRM. By doing this, you are providing a truly personalised and customer-centric experience. All the forms and surveys are mobile optimized and use a simple drag and drop function to create them. Check it out at surveyfunnel.io.
2.
One of the most obvious ways to segment your demographics is through paid social advertising. Almost every social network offers some level of audience segmentation when you pay for an advertising campaign. You can choose filters from geo, age, education, interests, and lots more, to advanced filters narrowing down audiences to highly specific segments. When you do this, you are testing your message on an audience segment, and if they respond, you can scale up your budget and continue to tell your story.
3.
Have you considered splitting your business into separate social profiles based on different audience subsets? For example, you could create separate Facebook pages for different audiences or add feature pages for niche interests of your followers on your LinkedIn company page. You can see that I have taken this approach for public sector marketing pros. While my business remains Digital Training Institute, I have created a sub-brand with distinct messaging and products specifically for people working in the public sector.
Ask JSB.
In this week's Ask JSB, the wedding lady Sandra Losty has 2 questions.
Hi Joanne, it's Sandra Lusty here, and my question is, how do you attract your clients when they don't necessarily know that they need you? So for example, my business is weddings, as you know, and the program that I have is very much placed nearer the time that people are getting married. So their head is full of all the big stuff, the venue, the dress, the shoes, the cake, all that sort of thing. Tail of things is that panic moment, right? But they're panicking too late for me to catch a hold of them. So they don't know they need me and until it's too late. So how do I get those pain points out without giving away the secret sauce? That's probably 2 questions in one, but I would be very happy to hear how you address a pain point without people realising they actually have a pain point. Hope that makes sense. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Sandra, thank you so much for your questions. And in actual fact, you have answered your first question with your second question. So you want to know how to attract your ideal client when they don't know that they need your services. Well, in fact, the answer is in your second question, which is discussing the pain points that they have and solving their problems. Content marketing is going to be your best friend here, Sandra. So what I suggest is that you list every single pain point and question that you've ever got from your clients. And in fact, if there's more questions that you haven't got, but you know they should be asking you, write them down. What you're then going to do is to create a series of different types of content to answer those questions. Make sure that those answers and those questions are SEO optimized, so you have the right keywords. Then use social to share and to get traction on the content. You're really great in front of the camera. I've seen you on video, so maybe video can be your best friend, and then embedding those videos into short blog posts on your website. By doing this, you are segmenting your audience and attracting your ideal customer. So having lots of content online will be your savior. And hey, don't worry about giving away your secret sauce. People who know, like, and trust you and believe that you have the information and the professionalism and the skills to deliver what they want will come to you. I hope that helps. And guys, if any of you are getting married, make sure that you check out Sandra's website. You'll find her at theperfectweddingexperience.com. If you have a digital marketing or social media question, don't forget you will have it answered on the show. You can ask me your question on social media by using the hashtag AskJSB, especially on Twitter or Instagram. You can also leave me a voicemail with your question at digitaltraininginstitute.ie/AskJSB.
JSB's column.
In today's JSB's column, I'm sharing how I defined, marketed, and won over my niche audience, and what hopefully you can learn from me. So here's my journey on how I created public sector marketing pros. Believe it or not, I've always been working in communication, so I've just evolved as my industry has evolved, and I've always played to my strengths. I've never deviated from my skill set. I felt I was working with anyone who would work with me, and I realised that was a bad strategy for business, but also for my mindset. So I went on a journey of changing it up. I tapped into my experience, my passions, and what I know. As you all know, you've been listening to me on this podcast for over 2 years. I started off my career as a broadcast journalist, so I worked with many different organisations, and I also used to cover the courts. I've also been a PR practitioner and lectured in public relations. I leveraged digital and social media to scale my message and to attract my ideal audience. But I knew that I had to do some more work on what my ideal audience was. So I decided to join a mastermind. That mastermind was with Sigrun, and I've had her on this show. She spent lots of time with me helping me to get clarity. Robin Sharma says, be careful in case you put your ladder up against the wrong wall. And what he means by that is be careful in case you chase the wrong audience and bring your business down the wrong road. So over a period of 12 months, and it sounds like a long time, I worked with Sigrun to get clarity on my ideal audience. And that audience turned out to be marketing and communications professionals working in government or the public sector. I then joined a second mastermind, and I'm in that now with Chris Ducker, who's based in London in the UK. So Chris and everybody else on the mastermind helps me to develop my new business model and scale globally. I also hired outside expertise. While I may know what I need to do and I know how to do it, I just don't have the time to put it into action. So I expanded my team and brought in the expertise that could move the business much faster. I took risks. In business, everything is about risk, but of course, they have to be informed and calculated. I created the sub-brand Public Sector Marketing Pros, launched a new website, hosted a live event for 150 people, a huge investment, and then I developed and designed my 12-month specialised programme, an accredited diploma in digital communications for public sector. I've also created lesser expensive products so that I can build up and feed my funnel until people want to take my diploma. So far, right now, I have 15 sold, and I have 13 public sector organisations from across Ireland taking the programme. I create content. Just like the advice that I was giving Sandra, content is my magnet for sales. My content speaks to my customers. I talk about their pain points and I provide solutions. They then know, like, and trust me, and they want to do business with me. And I've also committed to maintaining the highest of standards. Everything that I do, whether it's my podcast, my blog, my e-signs, or my consulting or training, has to meet a particular standard. And it's that consistency of standards and branding and professionalism that makes sure that I'm always filling my funnel with sales. I've also invested in marketing, branding, advertising, the team, as I mentioned, new software, continuing to build my content marketing, my live event, and direct marketing. I listen to the objections from my audience, I find solutions, and I speak to those people on an ongoing basis to make sure I'm delivering what they want. In business, you should never assume. And finally, I keep learning, always trying to be better, always trying to improve and grow, having my resolve and committing never to give up. To further serve my new ideal customer, I'm also launching a brand new podcast series called Public Sector Marketing Pros. So this is one show a month for my ideal audience where I will tap into their problems and provide solutions. All of the steps I have taken on this journey, I have actually documented in a blueprint for myself, but I'm also now sharing it with my clients. If you want to discuss your digital marketing strategy and how to define your perfect audience, then get in touch. Drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie and I'll be able to help you.
Social media tool of the week.
The social media tool that saved my working week this week is Ubersuggest from marketer and SEO expert Neil Patel. He acquired it earlier this year and he's revamped it. Ubersuggest pulls in data from Google's Keyword Planner and Google Suggest to give you tons of keyword suggestions. It's also free. The volume data is pulled from Google Keyword Planner, while the cost per click, CPC, and difficulty numbers comes from AdWords. If you want to find out which keywords you should be using to get traffic to your content, then give it a go. You'll find it at neilpatel.com/Ubersuggest. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 114 of JSB Talks Digital. If you are a regular listener, I would love a review. As always, I have everything discussed on today's show on my award-winning blog at digitaltraining.ie. And talking about award-winning blogs, Digital Training Institute has been longlisted for the 2018 Irish Blog Awards. We are current silver medal holders of Best Marketing and Communications Blog, so this year I'm hoping for gold. Don't forget we're now on Google Podcasts, reaching even more Android users, and you can also subscribe on iTunes or Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a digital marketing pro and work in the public sector, be sure to check out my diploma in digital communications for public sector at publicsectormarketingpros.com/diploma. Thank you all for continuing to listen and make sure that you get in touch. Between now and the next show, why not tweet me to a Tweets by JSB, or you can snap me to JSB Snaps. You'll find me on Instagram as JSB Grams. I'm Joanne Sweeney Burke. This is JSB Talks Digital. Thanks for listening and I'll talk to you soon.
JSB Talks Digital.